Really wonderful to be here. I'm really delighted. Je suis vraiment heureux d'être parmi vous. يا أهلا بزاغورا. I'm going to mix three languages. I'm going to mix three languages, Arabic, French, and English during my presentation. But there is so much visuals about robotics and so much excitement, I think you will understand everything. Talking about Zagora and the town here, this wonderful, beautiful town, this reminds me of three other things I need to talk about. And first of all, I need to talk about the fact that there are 5 cities in my life. The first one, if we can get it. Okay. So there is Aleppo. This is the city where I was born. And I finished my high school, and from high school I went to Montpellier and Paris and Toulouse, and where I did my undergrad, graduate study, and PhD. Well, following my PhD, I went for a postdoc to Stanford University. That was long time ago in 1981. And 1981, this is Stanford, beautiful campus. I hope someday I will see some of you over there. So I went to Stanford and started working on robots, implementing something called the artificial potential field. This is a very simple concept where robots are attracted to the goal like magnets and pushed away by repulsive forces. And just by navigating the robot through those fields, we can move the robot from one configuration to another. This is me in 1981. Now, FIRAS is the fonction induisant une répulsion artificielle de surface, which was the name of the function that we use in this. And as it happens, FIRAS is my son. And FIRAS, for those of you who remember, is the poet Abu Firas al-Hamadani, which is the poet of my city, Aleppo. Now, after what happened with robots since 1981, a lot of development took us through many explorations in robotics. And what we discovered with robots is that we really need to get closer and closer to the human to understand what we can do with robots. So first I'm going to discuss a little bit about human-robot interaction, and I'm going to use an example from our students at Stanford. These are my students in class performing this task, very challenging task of fighting with a robot. So this involves planning, control, perception. Yeah, keep it there. And a lot of that is done in real time, which is very, very challenging for a robot. Robotics is maturing today. We are at 50 years of robots, and in the 50 you see a lot of names of different robots. These robots were built over the past 50 years with different applications. Essentially, we started with the idea that robots can help us in manufacturing. And we were very successful in manufacturing, but the requirement in manufacturing doesn't take the intelligence and the needs that are in human environment. And this is where we are today. A lot of applications that brings robots together with the human. And what we see here, we see robots assisting the human, working with the human, and bringing extension to the ability of the human to operate. So we will see robots working in space, underwater. We see robots helping the elderly. We see robots operating, and these robots actually, unfortunately, not operating on their own. The surgeon is still there, the robot are merely extending the hands of the surgeon to reach inside the human body and do the operation. We are seeing also a huge impact of robotics on the human. Now, by looking at how the human manages to deal with complex tasks and trying to understand the human, we are able to create new models and new technologies for the human. And we will discuss a little bit of that. So we are able now to create a human-like behavior, almost a digital model of the human, to do animation and to understand how a human moves and to use that in therapy. So as robotics is coming closer and closer to the human, we are looking at applications that are going to require new kind of robots. We need to deal with safety. Safety is very important because not anymore we're talking about a robot in isolation in the manufacturing plant. We are talking about a robot that needs to be human-friendly. So safety is very important, but the capability of the robot is also very important. And the two are always competing. Safety and performance are competing in the design, and we need to think about ways of building new robots. There are a lot of development of robotics for safe and human-friendly designs, and this is one example at Stanford University where we are using hybrid actuation, we are using muscle-like actuation, like the human, to bring about safe and high-performance robots. In fact, this robot is being built now with skin, and we are, this is not spotting me. Next one. Maybe someone could. Okay. So this is the skin around the robot that is going to also protect the robot and let us sense and feel what the robot is doing. So the story of robotics in the human environment at Stanford started a long time ago. In the mid-90s, we built Romeo and Juliet. And Romeo and Juliet are illustrated here, and you can see what these robots were capable of doing. In fact, Bill Gates visited Stanford, and he was amused about this robot that was capable of, in fact, interacting with the human and even dancing with the human. So here, the human is guiding the motion, the robot is performing tasks such as ironing my shirt. And you can see the robot dancing with the human. All of this because of compliance. Compliance, that is the robot's ability to touch, feel, and interact with the environment. This challenge is much more difficult as we move forward with more complex robots like humanoid robots. The problem then is how can we take this whole system and put it in the environment and feel all the different contact the robot is making with that environment. That requires perception, that requires sensing, and there is a lot of sensing, tactile sensing, force sensing, visual feedback, and we need to take all of these together to get this robot to move. Now, you have seen probably this robot. This is Ashimo. Ashimo is capable of running, of jumping, of doing a lot of fantastic things in balance, in the dynamic environment. The question is, would Ashimo be able to do useful things? And this is a big challenge that a lot of us are working on. Interacting with the world is not only about moving, it's about also making contact with the world, about manipulating the objects that we have in the world. So we need to combine mobility and manipulation, and that is very important. Humans are amazing. We do things every day, and we do not think about it. These things that we are doing are very challenging and difficult for a robot. And if we want to do more complex things, this is yet require more skills, more abilities in manipulating those objects and putting them together. So for Ashimo, we started exploring how can we do things? How can we touch the environment? How can we interact with this environment? And here you can see Ashimo performing the first elementary tasks of just making that interaction. Well, to go further, we need to be able to, here is another example, and this example is going to require more perception and more planning and more capabilities. So this is going to rely on the idea that the robot is not only controlled to move to a location, the robot needs to be able to touch, to feel the contact. And this is going to require integrating the sensing, the tactile perception, together with the control of the robot. Here is an example I'm showing where the robot is making contact at different locations without knowing what location the robot is going to. The robot goal is to maintain a relationship of face-to-face between these two objects. And this is only done using force sensing. Now, this idea can be extended to many different tasks where we know human can do it. But in order to understand how human do it, we need to study human. And not only ask human how you're doing this, we need to model the human, and we need to think about the musculoskeletal system the human has and try to describe the dynamics, describe the kinematics, and understand what is going on in those human motions. There has been a lot of work in this area of human motion, and this is not working very well. So we take our students and we have them perform different tasks, and then we take those tasks and analyze, and we look at the characteristics. What we discover is that actually human, sort of like we do when engineers, what we do, we build a machine to make use of the mechanical advantage of the machine. Well, humans discover about their own mechanical advantage and use it. So when we move, we are essentially making use of our understanding of how we move. So if we are pushing an object, we will not push it like on the left side, because we will need to support all the forces. We use the belly on the right side, and the effort is very small. There are a lot of things about the human motion that we can learn, and those things can allow us to now reconstruct the human motion. Reconstruct the human motion from characteristics that we minimize, and then we can map these to the robot. In fact, Ashimo here is just following that model. It is not going to be programmed joint by joint and coordinated all these joints. We are just going to move to a goal position, we're going to take a posture, we're going to move the robot while maintaining all these different constraints. What happened, as we study human, we discover that what we are doing is also useful for human. That is, what we are doing in robotics is not only useful for robots, but it's also useful for understanding a human motion. So we started working with actually our athletes, and we started to try to understand how they move, how can we help them improve their performance. And this is taking us in a completely other direction. But the idea that we were inspired by the robot to better control the robot, we developed mathematical models that help understand the robot motion. We apply this to the human, and now we are able to assist and work with the human to improve performance or to help in different tasks where, for instance, an injured can be, we do the re-education using those models and using feedback from robotics. So the two aspects, studying the human and applying it to the robot, and then returning and closing the circle, applying it to the human. There is another aspect of robotics that is fantastic in the classroom, in the design, in many aspects of robotics, and this is the idea of haptics. Haptics is about simulating the sense of touch. And we use haptic to create interactions with the environment and also with the virtual environment. To do that, we need to simulate the environment. So we need models that allow us to simulate the dynamics and the interaction between the robot and the environment. And once we have that, we can go and start studying skills of humans. For instance, here is a skill of a human that is recorded. So the human is moving, we are recording the motion, we are recording the forces. Then we analyze those characteristics, we look at the frames, we look how the motion is done, we look not at that specific motion, we try to extract the global strategy, and then we apply it to the robot. And now the robot will do the same thing, but in a very general way. Well, this idea of having the robot performing a human skill could be done using haptics. That is, we can teach the robot through haptics, and the robot now is going to record those motions the human is performing and reproduce them in real time. So those ideas, one more time, that is good. So in here we have a more complex task, and the human again is interacting with the robot and producing those behaviors. So physical interaction with the environment of the robot is very important. But how are we going to control this robot? If you think about what you're doing when you are performing a task, there are a lot of things going on. We have to control our posture, we have to control the contact, we have to control the constraints, we have to control the limits, we have to balance, we have to do a lot of things. And what we started to do is to be inspired by the human to combine all these things in a coherent fashion. And building a model that will allow us to do this coordination and develop human-like behavior that would allow us to control the robot in very difficult tasks. So here is Ashimo. Ashimo is compliantly following the human while maintaining a contact and moving up and down, maintaining balance. Here is Ashimo sitting, and when Ashimo is sitting, it is making multiple contacts, and still it is guided by the human. Here is Ashimo learning how to perform a task, that is to lift an object. Here is Ashimo avoiding collision. You remember in the beginning I said there is the artificial potential field concept that allows us to push the robot away from obstacles. Well, here the robot is moving away from the hand, and it is moving away by those repulsive forces. So once we have all of these things and those capabilities, now we can do a lot of things with those robots. There is one amazing application, a natural application, which is the application to disastrous areas. So we all know about Fukushima and what happened in Fukushima, where humans are walking to try to fix problems in very dangerous environments. And robots could be wonderful if we take robots there instead of humans. Well, the problem is most of those robots that we have built were designed for indoor environment. And they cannot really go in those challenging, unstructured, three-dimensional environments. So we are developing a technique called contact-supported locomotion, and this technique allows us essentially to move while using the environment for balance. So the robot here is going to use the environment for balance, and if there is no support in the environment, the robot is going to carry with it the tools to support itself. So instead of moving with 2 legs, we are going now to have 3 legs or 4 legs using these poles. And this idea allows us to go much further in terms of balancing and taking those robots to challenging environments. So here is an example of suprabed manipulation and locomotion. The robot is exploring that space and making contact with the environment and moving in that environment while balancing. And now we have this compact robot that is able to go into narrow spaces in Fukushima-like environment and be able to perform manipulation tasks. I challenge you if you can do this task. Est-ce que vous pouvez faire ça? Well, je pense it is a very challenging task in terms of the balance for a robot. And here all the development is based on the fact that we are perceiving the environment, sensing the environment, and making the robot feel what it is touching and what it's doing in that environment. Finally, I'm going to discuss another application, which is to go in those fragile areas and to take a robot that will be able to deal with those coral reefs environment, that is a robot that is very safe for those environments. Now, obviously we cannot take robots that are heavy, they could destroy the environment. What we need to do there is to be able to place sensors, to collect samples, and we need something that is very gentle and very safe. So we are building, it is in the other direction. So we are building a robot that is going to operate almost like in surgery. So we are going to use a haptic device, and we are going to use this robot that is remotely controlled by the human on the boat, and the robot is going to move in that environment while interacting with the human. This robot is called Sindbad, the Explorer, and this robot was built with Mecca Robotics and cows in Saudi Arabia. And here is the robot being controlled haptically. So the operator is operating the robot from a remote area. This is my student here operating the robot. And the robot is under the control of the human, but the robot has a lot of autonomy. To do a task like this, you need the robot to be able to autonomously touch and dock on the environment by sensing its own contact and stabilize it. You can imagine all the applications that we can have now underwater in repair, in inspections. And let me just finish with this illustration. Here's the robot underwater, and under the operation of the human is moving to contact and to operating difficult tasks, and then the robot is going to move to another level. All of this is described by the human and the robot autonomy and the robot perception. Thank you very much for your attention.